Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. It all started with little things. Laura, my wife of 8 years, began working late more often. "The new project is killing me," she'd say with a tired smile. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone has busy seasons at work, right? But then, there was something else. Something subtle but different. Laura would sometimes glance at her phone and smile, quickly tucking it away when I noticed. I dismissed it. I didn't want to be one of those paranoid husbands. I trusted her. One evening, my friend Mike and I grabbed a few beers. We talked about work, football, the usual stuff. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "Hey, isn't Laura's boss that guy, Mr. Harrison?" "Yeah, why?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Well, I saw them the other night at that little Italian place near downtown. Looked kinda cozy." I chuckled nervously. "It's probably just a work dinner. You know how demanding her job can be." Mike gave me a look, but he didn't push it. That night I couldn't sleep. Mike's words kept playing in my head. I didn't want to believe it, but the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. The next morning I decided to ask Laura directly. "Hey, Mike said he saw you having dinner with Mr. Harrison the other night. Everything okay?" She looked at me, startled. "Oh yeah, that was just a work thing. You know how he is, always discussing business over dinner. Nothing to worry about." Her explanation seemed plausible, but the way she hurried through it made my gut twist. Over the next few weeks, Laura became even more distant. She was glued to her phone, always smiling at some message. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off. "Just work stuff," she'd say. But it wasn't just the phone. She had been avoiding intimacy completely. Every time I tried to get close, she'd pull away with some excuse. Too tired, a headache, or just not in the mood. It felt like there was this invisible wall growing between us, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't break through it. "Laura, we haven't been together in weeks," I said one night, trying to bridge the gap. "Is something wrong?" She turned away from me. "I'm just exhausted, Jack. Work is draining me." Her words felt hollow, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than just work. Adding to my worry, she started coming home late from work more frequently now, always with the same excuse. More business dinners, more strict deadlines. One evening I confronted her. "Laura, we barely spend time together anymore," I said, frustration lacing my voice. "You're always working late or out at these dinners. What's going on?" She sighed, looking genuinely tired. "Jack, it's just this new project. Mr. Harrison is very strict and he's pushing all of us hard. I'm not happy about it either, but I don't have a choice." I nodded, but inside doubt was growing. The next day, while Laura was upstairs doing laundry, a message popped up on her phone. Unable to resist, I glanced at the screen. It was from her boss, Mr. Harrison. "Can't wait for tomorrow." My heart clenched. I was about to leave it alone, but my suspicion had grown too strong. When she got back, I asked casually, "Do you have another dinner tomorrow?" She nodded without looking at me. "Yeah, another business dinner. It's been nonstop lately." The following day, my instincts wouldn't let me rest. I decided to follow Laura after work to find out where these business dinners were really taking her. Something wasn't right, and I needed to know the truth. As she left work, I trailed her car, staying a few cars behind to avoid being spotted. She drove across town and pulled into the parking lot of a fancy restaurant. I parked nearby, waiting. A few moments later, I watched as Laura stepped out of her car, and to my surprise, Mr. Harrison was already there, waiting for her at the entrance. They walked into the restaurant together, and from where I stood, it was clear this wasn't just a business dinner. It was just the two of them. They were laughing, leaning close to each other in a way that made my stomach churn. I snapped a few photos of them through the restaurant window, capturing their intimate conversation and shared smiles. After about an hour, they left the restaurant. They got into Laura's car and drove a short distance to a nearby hotel. I parked a bit further down the street and watched them head toward the hotel entrance. They stood there for a moment, exchanging a few more words. Then, to my utter disbelief, they kissed, right there in front of the hotel. My hands shook as I took more pictures, documenting every damning moment. They didn't linger. They quickly entered the hotel together. I sat in my car, stunned and unable to move. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was sneaking around with her boss, laughing, kissing, and walking into a hotel together. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. leaving me breathless and shattered. I drove home in a daze, trying to process everything I had just seen. My hands were still shaking from the photos I'd taken. I couldn't confront her yet. I needed time to think. 2 hours later, I heard the door open and she walked in, looking calm but a bit disheveled. "Hey, you're home early," she said, dropping her purse on the couch. I nodded, trying to act normal. "How was the dinner?" "Oh, just the usual. Mr. Harrison's been really demanding lately." I forced a smile. "Anything else?" She shrugged. "No, just a long night." I didn't press her further. She moved around the house, distracted and still somewhat distant, while I sat there, my mind already focused on the next step. The next day, I went to a lawyer to discuss the divorce process and how to protect my assets. He explained everything I needed to know: how to gather documents, safeguard my savings, and prepare for the legal steps ahead. Leaving the office, I felt a sense of clarity. I wasn't relieved, but I was ready. I now had a plan and knew the next steps I needed to take. When I got home that evening, I felt ready to confront Laura. As I walked up the stairs, I heard her voice coming from the bedroom. She was on the phone, speaking in a low tone, but the words were clear enough. "Yes, I'd like to schedule an appointment as soon as possible," she said. "No, it's urgent. Thank you. Thursday at 3 p.m. works perfectly." I froze in the hallway, listening. My heart raced. Was she talking to a health clinic? What could be so urgent that she needed to make an appointment without mentioning it to me? After a moment of hesitation, I decided I wouldn't confront her right then. I'd wait and see what was really going on with her health before I made any accusations. When she hung up, I stepped into the bedroom. "Laura?" I called softly. She spun around, her eyes wide with shock. "Jack, what are you doing home so early?" "I finished work early," I said, studying her face. "Who were you talking to?" Her hesitation was brief, but I caught it. "Oh, it was just Sarah. You know, from yoga class. She's going through some stuff and I was just helping her out." I nodded slowly, watching her carefully. "Is everything okay with her?" "Yeah, just some personal issues," Laura replied quickly, brushing it off. "Nothing major." I waited, hoping she would mention something about the call, maybe that it was a doctor's appointment or anything related to her health. But she didn't. She just stood there, avoiding my gaze, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. The silence between us stretched out, and my suspicion grew. If it was really nothing, why wouldn't she just tell me? We always shared these kinds of things. If something was going on with her health, she would have told me, wouldn't she? "Laura, if it's just a call with Sarah, why do you look so tense?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She shrugged, still not meeting my eyes. "I guess I'm just tired. Work has been overwhelming." But her words didn't ease my mind. If anything, they only made my suspicion deepen. Something wasn't adding up. When the day of her appointment came, I decided to take the day off. I needed to know what was going on. If she wasn't going to tell me the truth, I'd have to find out myself. I waited for her to leave, then followed her at a safe distance. She drove across town, eventually pulling into the parking lot of a health clinic. My heart sank as I watched her go inside. What was she doing here? I stayed parked across the street, watching and waiting. About an hour later, Laura came back out, looking around nervously before getting into her car and driving home. I gave it another hour before heading back myself, just to make sure she wouldn't suspect I had followed her. When I walked in, she was already in the shower. The sound of the running water gave me the perfect opportunity. I approached her purse, sitting on the kitchen counter. My hands trembled as I unzipped it and started rummaging through the contents. My heart pounded as I searched, and then I found it. A receipt from the health clinic. My eyes scanned the paper until they landed on the words that made me freeze. STD test. I felt the world tilt under my feet. My mind raced with questions, but the one that screamed the loudest was why. Why was she getting tested for an STD, and why hadn't she told me? I quickly shoved the receipt into my pocket just as I heard the water turn off upstairs. My heart raced and my mind spun, unable to fully process what I'd just discovered. I backed away, trying to steady myself, waiting for her to come down. When Laura finally came downstairs, she walked into the kitchen, completely unaware of what was coming. I stood still, my heart pounding in my chest. The weight of everything that had happened felt suffocating. "Laura," I said, my voice cold and controlled, "we need to talk." She looked at me, her eyes wary, but she didn't say anything. I didn't give her a chance to speak as I pulled out my phone, showing her the pictures, her and her boss, laughing together, leaning close and then kissing outside the hotel. Her face drained of color and she took a step back, her lips trembling. "How long, Laura?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. "How long have you been lying to me? How long have you been with him?" She opened her mouth, but the words didn't come. She was frozen, caught in the truth. I didn't wait for her to speak, my frustration boiling over. "You've been seeing him behind my back," I continued, "and I had no idea. You've been betraying me in ways I can't even comprehend." I stepped forward, shoving the receipt into her face. "And this," I said, voice low but filled with fury. "What is this? You got an STD? You brought an STD into our marriage? After everything, this is what I get?" Her eyes widened in shock and she took a shaky breath. "Jack, I never meant—" "Don't you dare," I interrupted, voice rising. "Don't try to justify it. You've been lying. And now this is the ultimate betrayal. How could you do this to us?" She looked down, tears beginning to fill her eyes. "I'm sorry, Jack. I never wanted to hurt you." But her apology felt empty, hollow. The damage was done, and nothing she said could take away the sting of her betrayal. It was all too much. I couldn't stand there any longer. My heart was shattered and the anger was suffocating. I went to the bedroom, packed a few things into my bag, and turned back to face her one last time. "It's over, Laura," I said, my voice cold. "I'm filing for divorce. I can't do this anymore." I turned and walked out of the house, not looking back. The sound of her calling my name, the frantic texts that followed, it all faded into the background as I got into my car and drove off. I couldn't deal with her anymore. I couldn't deal with us. I checked into a hotel, needing to be far from her, from everything that reminded me of the lies and betrayal. For 2 days she called and texted nonstop, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. The weight of everything was too heavy, and the silence was all I could handle. I needed to think, to process, but all I could feel was numbness. On the 3rd day, I returned to the house to pack up a few more things. When I walked in, Laura was there, sitting on the couch, her face pale. She looked at me with hesitation before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "The test results came back," she said. "I'm positive." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there for a moment, just staring at her, unsure how to process what she was saying. "I can't believe it," I muttered under my breath. "You've been sleeping with him and now I have to deal with this." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Jack. I never meant for it to go this far." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The damage was done and I was already so far gone from what we once had. I grabbed my things and left, no longer caring about the past, only focused on the future, my future. I also went to a clinic the next day and got tested for STDs. I couldn't take any chances. I needed to know I was safe, but the fear gnawed at me every second. Thankfully, the test results came back clear, but the emotional damage was already done. The divorce process was long and painful, but I knew it was the right decision. I worked with my lawyer to ensure that everything was fair, making sure to protect my savings and assets. Laura didn't fight me too much. She knew it was over. When the divorce was finalized, she walked away with nothing, though it was hard to ignore the emptiness I felt. Alongside the divorce, I took legal action against her boss. With the evidence I had, photos of them together, the hotel footage and text messages, I sued him for his part in the affair. He had abused his position to manipulate Laura and contribute to the destruction of my marriage. I didn't expect it to be a huge financial win, but it was my way of holding him accountable for the betrayal and trying to regain a sliver of control in the situation. I moved on, though I was scarred by the betrayal. The trust I had once placed in her was gone, and while I tried to rebuild, the pieces of what happened stayed with me. The journey wasn't easy, but I had learned to stand up for myself, to protect my heart. In the end, I didn't regret my decision. It hurt, but it was necessary. Thank you for watching.